Excellencies, who is Ambassador to Ghana, Togo, and Benin, Country Director, GIZ, our partner institutions, which I will duly acknowledge later, and distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning once again and welcome. My name is Emmanuel Boache Ansa with the PR unit of the Ministry of Finance, and I want to welcome you all to the launch of the 2019 Ghana Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative report. This program promises to be a short one that will culminate in our quest to enhance transparency around the generation and extraction, the generation and spending of revenues that we extract in the extractive sector so as to improve development outcomes and reduce potential for corruption. I'm so certain that we will leave here with a renewed sense of patriotism on our quest to ensure transparency and patriotism as we yearn for a better Ghana. Without wasting much time, I respectfully call Millicent Gheiti to give us an opening prayer. Let's welcome her with a clap.
All right, thank you very much. Now, please, shall we pray? Thank you, Most High God, for this morning. We thank you for the gift of life and the opportunity to gather here once again to deliberate about the development of our country. We ask you, Lord, to be with us, take control of everything that we're going to do over here, that at the end of the day we'll give you all the glory. This and many more do we ask through your beloved Jesus Christ, who lives and reigns with us forever and ever. Amen.
Thank you so much, Millicent. Before we take our opening remark, I respectfully introduce our dignitaries here and then respectfully ask that they take their seats as I introduce them. The first person is our Honorable Deputy Minister for Finance. He's an entrepreneur, a lawyer, and a man of God, Honorable John Ampuntiakuma. And I have to also add that he is the Member of Parliament representing the people of Ejuso constituency in the Ashanti region. Honorable, thank you so much for your good services to the people of Ghana. The next is the Honorable Deputy Minister for Energy, Honorable Mohammed Amin Adam. Honorable, you are welcome. Kindly take your seat. Next to be invited to the high table is the Swiss Ambassador to Ghana, Togo, and Benin, His Excellency Ambassador Philip Stalda. We also have the Country Director for GIZ, Regina B. Babusa. Ma'am, you're welcome. Thank you. Last but not the least is the chair of this morning's program. Benjamin Ayer is his name. He's an advisor on mining to the Honorable Minister for Lands and Natural Resources. And he was the CEO of the Minerals Commission from 2001 to 2014. That's a big portfolio, sir. Let's give it to them all. I must say that we have a tall list, so I'll keep recognizing and acknowledging our dignitaries intermittently. At this point, permit me to, as the saying goes, ask the chair. That's the tradition. I've been asked to do that. Ask him if he is ready to moderate or handle this program for us. So, Mr. Benai, I would like to ask you, are you ready to be the chair for us, as I've been asked to do? If yes, kindly say a few words to us. All right.
Thank you. Honorable Ministers, Members of Parliament, members of the Diplomatic Corps, colleagues, distinguished invited guests, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. As a country, let me say we did not choose to be endowed with extractive resources. Nature did. However, we can make a choice in wisely using these resources in which we have natural comparative advantage, but which are, I must note, depletable. And therefore, we consciously need to turn them into sustainable competitive advantage to underpin our long-term development agenda. The pursuits of transparency in the management and use of such resources by EITI may not be a panacea to all our problems, but it certainly is a prerequisite and a key component for achieving the optimal growth and development which we strive to. Through my association with the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources and the Minerals Commission, I've had the privilege of participating in the EITI process in various capacities and dimensions. I must refer to its initiation in 2003, our first mining reports in about 2006, and oil and gas subsequently in 2011. 11. I've seen Ghana's EITI framework develop into a robust structure spanning, as I've indicated, both the mining and oil and gas sectors in recent times, with a commendable collaboration among the key stakeholders, that is government, industry, and civil society. I feel therefore very honored to be offered the opportunity, remembering this is the second time in recent times, to chair the ceremony to launch the Ghana EITI reports. This time around, the 2019 mining and gas, as well as mining and oil and gas reports. I hereby therefore warmly accept the opportunity to chair this occasion. Thank you very much.
So before we take the next speech, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of GNPC, the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources, Ministry of Energy, Office of the Administrator of Stool Lands, Petrol Commission, Tulu Ghana, Minerals Commission. We have a list that is tall, so as and when the time makes way, we introduce them and acknowledge them. At this point, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, he is also the MP for Karaga and Deputy Minister for Energy, as I've already introduced him. Honorable Dr. Mohammed Amin Adam is here to give us a remark. Honorable Minister, we are in your hands. Let's give him a very big round of applause, Honorable Deputy Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, a seasoned veteran mining expert, Mr. Aye, honorable colleague, Honorable John Kuma, MP, Deputy Minister for Finance, Chief Executive Officers, members of the Ghana EITI Multi-Stakeholder Group, His Excellency, or Her Excellency, the Swiss Ambassador to Ghana and GIZ Country Director, representatives of civil society organizations, representatives of various institutions here, friends from the media, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It is of great pleasure on behalf of my minister, the Minister for Energy, the Honorable Dr. Matthew Opoku Prempeh, and in my capacity as the champion of Ghana EITI, welcome you all to the launch of the 2019 Ghana EITI reports for the mining and oil and gas sectors. For those of you who may not know what the Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative is about, it is a global governance tool for improving transparency and accountability in resource-rich countries through the full publication and verification of company payments and government revenues from mining and oil and gas sectors. The EITI is a government-led process with government and companies making disclosures whilst civil society serves as watchdog to ensure that the set goals are attained. EITI implementation has two fundamental components: transparency and accountability. The EITI standard, as many of us already know, encourages EITI implementing countries to explore innovative approaches to addressing existing and emerging issues in the extractive sector based on national priorities, and report same to stakeholders with a view to increasing public understanding through public engagement and debate. It is against this backdrop that the Ghana EITI and its esteemed multi-stakeholder group ensure timely production and publication of their reports on the extractive sector. Ladies and gentlemen, per the EITI standards, it is obligatory for Gheiti MSG to launch and disseminate the findings and recommendations of the reports on the mining as well as the oil and gas sectors to stakeholders, because we believe that the responsibility of propagating the findings and recommendations of the reports must be all-inclusive. It is only when stakeholders take responsibility for the various aspects of the reports that we can efficiently address and reform our institutions to respond to the needs of our times. Mr. Chairman, the EITI standard is more vigorous, more relevant, and a good instrument for citizens to seek accountability. The standard and its requirements are continuously being refined to reflect the changing dynamics in the extractive sector. And some of the changes we well know include the energy transition, environmental and gender considerations, just to mention a few. I wish to suggest that, given the challenges and complexities confronting resource-endowed countries, the EITI should further consider exploring ways on how to use the initiative for domestic resource mobilization and strengthening anti-corruption mechanisms. I do appreciate the value or premium the EITI places on data quality, and thus requires the use of audited data for its reports, which largely accounts for why the production and publication of Gheiti reports often delay. For me, the issues by way of findings and recommendations often raised in the EITI reports are so critical and require immediate, appropriate policy responses in a timely manner. There is therefore the need to ensure a fine balance between data quality as required by the EITI standard and timeliness and relevance of data disclosed in the reports for an expeditious remedial action to address the key issues as well as for policy making purposes. I understand the International EITI Secretariat and the EITI Board are currently holding consultations and seeking views from EITI implementing countries for further refinement of certain sections of the standard, and hope that the aforementioned suggestion will find space in the revised standard to be approved by the board. Mr. Chairman, Ghana currently has produced a total of 25 reports, 16 mining reports between 2004 and 2019, and 9 oil and gas reports between 2011 and 2019, in order to make information on the extractive sector available and accessible to the general public. The issues raised in the reports will go a long way to inform and shape policy direction in Ghana's extractive sector in particular and the economy in general. As you by now know, significant global developments are changing the hydrocarbons landscape, which presents significant threats as well as opportunities. As reported in the report that will be launched today, the upstream oil and gas sector in Ghana contributed 6.4% to the gross domestic product in 2019, with a growth rate of 14.4% at constant 2013 prices. These notably impressive numbers could, however, not be sustained beyond 2019, as COVID-19 pandemic and the energy transition towards cleaner fuels have heavily impacted the oil and gas industry, including ours. Government has therefore recognized that Ghana must take leadership to steer the oil industry to the era of growth maximization. Countries like Nigeria and Venezuela that have been hit harder are putting their destinies in their own hands. Particularly, Nigeria's new petroleum bill has sought to mobilize domestic resources to fund oil exploration in frontier areas, which are being abandoned by the international oil majors. As a small producing country, we in Ghana are also taking measures to increase our stake in producing fuels to generate more revenue for the state and to support GNPC's operations. In this wise, ladies and gentlemen, GNPC has successfully increased its stake in the Jubilee fields by 7%, whilst negotiating to increase our shares in the Eka Energy and AGM blocks. As we increase our commercial interest, ladies and gentlemen, the demand for transparency and accountability also will increase, and legitimately so. And as usual, I am confident that the robust civil society space that we have in Ghana will rise up to the challenge of ensuring that we continue to scrutinize Ghana's value maximization approach. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no doubt that the reports issued by Gheiti have not only provided a point of reference for information on Ghana's oil and gas industry and the mining industry, but have also turned in recommendations that have shaped government policy over the years. But in spite of the positive impact of the EITI processes, we need to do more on the accountability dimension. The process has not been successful in carrying the majority of Ghanaians along. And this is well documented in a study by the Norwegian government in 2019. Therefore, the process of the EITI is yet to achieve public ownership of the process. And this is an important requirement of ensuring public accountability. The majority of our people still do not know about EITI. The majority of our people still do not read the EITI reports. And the majority of our people do not use that rich information contained in this report to ask legitimate questions and to engender accountability. Therefore, we must increase the sensitization of our people about the EITI and find innovative ways of enhancing the reading and utilization of the reports by our citizens. We must collaborate with the Ministry of Education to capture the key principles of EITI in our curriculum, particularly for the first and second level students. I'm talking about basic and secondary level students. We must work with the media to create space for EITI education programs in both the print and the electronic media. I do know that Gheiti has been holding stakeholder consultations around the country. This is commendable. But if we can do more than we have done before and find other ways of engaging our people, we will be creating a strong accountability force that will ensure that the integrity of our natural resources is well protected. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to conclude by echoing that government is keen on the implementation of the recommendations made in these reports. The recommendations of the EITR reports have informed a wide range of policy reforms in both the mining and the oil and gas sectors. And we salute the members of the Ghana EITI, MSG, for your great services to our country. We salute you. And I want to thank you all for your cooperation. I want to thank you for your attention. Thank you very much.
Let's give him another big round of applause. Thank you so much, Honorable Minister, Deputy Minister, for that thought-provoking and insightful opening remarks that has, I believe, set the tone for an effective discourse. God richly bless you. Before we take our solidarity message from the country director of GIZ, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Ghana Revenue Authority, the GIZ, our friends from the media, Ministry of Finance, Civil Society Organization, the Upstream Petroleum Chamber, Ghana Chamber of Mines. So you are all welcome. The list, as I keep saying, we have to all list. So let's put our hands together for all of these institutions that have made time to be with us this morning. Thank you so much for coming. At this point, permit me to invite the country director for GIZ, Regina B. Barbosa, to give us a solidarity message. Madam, you're welcome.
Yes, thank you very much. The Honorable Deputy Minister of Finance, Mr. John Kumar, the Honorable Deputy Minister of Energy, Dr. Mohammed Amin Adam, His Excellency Philip Stadler, Swiss Ambassador to Ghana, Stalder, Chair and Co-Chair of the Multi-Stakeholder Group, members of the MSCG, representatives of various institutions and agencies, the media, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to everybody. As country director of GIZ, the implementing agency of the German government for sustainable development, I get sent dozens of reports, briefings, and newsletters every month on my desk. Hundreds of pages with long text blocks and small numbers. Let's be honest, reports are not really the kind of text you want to leisure reading. Today, the Ghana Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative, Gheiti, launches the 2019 Reconciliation Reports for Ghana. And unlike some of the other reports on my desk, these IT reports excite me because they are an important building block for more transparency, accountability, and higher governance standard in the oil, gas, and mining sector. The reports contain the most important figures from Ghana's oil, gas, and mining sector. And with their publication, Ghana demonstrates its commitment to the extractive industry's transparency initiative, despite the challenges through the COVID-19 pandemic. The publication is good news for all citizens of Ghana, as they get full disclosure about how the revenues from the development of their own country's natural resources are being used. And now, as the Honorable Vice Minister said, they have to read it as well. But this is the possibility now to publish it and to make it open to public. So last year, the Gheiti, who was already our partner, asked GIZ for support to produce these reports. We at GIZ were delighted to receive the request because it fitted perfectly to GIZ values and our firm belief that transparency and accountability will improve the governance in the sector. It is impressive to see Ghana's progress in implementing the Transparency Initiative, or EITI, from successive validation exercises to a country with meaningful progress in implementing the initiative's requirement. Years of commitment have contributed to the progress so far. And today, these EITI initiatives initiates various policy reforms to solve issues in the extractive sector. Since Ghana signed onto the EITI, the country has produced 19 mining and 9 oil and gas sector reports. Not only are the reports produced, but Ghana also implements the recommendations in line with the EITI principles. However, there is still more to be done to get to the level we want in the implementation of the standard. According to the assessments, the level of systemic disclosure in Ghana is currently at about 26% of the standard required, which is still very low. Raising this figure significantly requires the collective effort of the government and its sub-agencies, mining, oil and gas companies, and the support of development partners. So we remain positive that all stakeholders will support the disclosure exercise. May I use this opportunity to acknowledge the Swiss State Secretariat for Economic Affairs for partnering with us to fund and support this worthy initiative. The EITI reports remain a credible source of information for research, advocacy, and for the public interest. GIZ remains committed to support the improvement, transparency, accountability, and governance standards in the extractive sector through its governance project. And we hope that the recommendation of these reports will influence government policy for the collective good of all. We encourage the Ghana Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative to actively engage with relevant institutions to achieve the needed policy reforms. Thank you all for your attention.
Thank you for your words of assurance and support for Ghana. God bless you. Before I introduce the next speaker, permit me, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, to acknowledge the Petroleum Commission. They are duly represented here. Eni Ghana and Boas and Associates. You're all welcome. At this point, we shall go to His Excellency Philip Stalder, Ambassador, the Swiss Ambassador to Ghana, Togo, and Benin, for his solidarity remarks. Let's welcome him with a clap.
Okay, Honorable Deputy Minister John Kuma, Honorable Deputy Minister Amin Adam, Chair, Co-Chair, and members of the multi-stakeholder group, Country Director of GIZ, heads of agencies and representatives of various institutions, colleagues from the media, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. As you just heard, Switzerland co-financed the 2019 EIT report, and therefore I'm here and happy to share with you some of my remarks prepared by my staff. Switzerland for many years supports the extractive industry transparency initiative EIT to improve governance of the extractive sector on a global stage. This is based on our conviction that the benefits of natural resources such as oil, gas, and minerals belong to the people and not to the government of a country. The extraction of natural resources, if carefully done, leads not only to economic growth, but also adds to social development. However, when poorly managed, in many countries we've seen that it can also lead to corruption, the rise of unrest and conflicts among different segments of society. Not to mention the environmental costs which often come along with the extraction of natural resources. The positive and important message here to note, however, dear participants of this launch event, is the fact that through EITI process, adhering members of the organization have become accountable as for the management of natural resources by complying with the global transparency standard. The EITI mechanism aims at strengthening the public debate and to raise public ownership, as it was also mentioned this morning, and also to enhance trust among the various stakeholders. Overall, the EITI process has evolved positively. What is interesting to underline is the crucial shift in how the standard allows countries and companies to systematically disclose information through their own systems. New ground was broken with disclosure requirements on environmental, social, and gender impacts. Let me also add that in 2018, Switzerland financed the first commodity trading pilot study in Ghana through the International EITI Secretariat, and the report is publicly available on their website. Ladies and gentlemen, in Ghana, Switzerland, through SECO, has a long-standing partnership with our implementation partner, GIZ, through which we jointly support the Ghanaian government in 3 areas: improve the tax policy administration, strengthening the accountability, and increase the demand for better resource governance. Under the increased demand to better resource governance, our partnership is leveraged to improve capacity development of institutions, to support initiatives to better reforms in domestic revenue mobilization programs, and to improve institutional collaboration among various sector agencies. Today, the launch of these reports, we will listen to them in a few moments, symbolize yet another milestone in the demand for better governance of the extractive sector. Switzerland is happy to support these processes that enable the government to fulfill its international obligations under EITI. These milestones are important success stories in our development cooperation with Ghana. By concluding, I would like to congratulate Ghana and all the stakeholders for the successes so far accomplished, and also encourage all our partners, and especially the Ministry of Finance, to engage constructively on the recommendations contained in these reports, and to come up with appropriate policy measures, as mentioned by the Honorable Deputy Minister of Energy. So I would like to commend the government for the continuous support and the commitment towards EITI process, and I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency. At this point, the next speaker will perform 2 major functions. He will give us the keynote address, and also with the assistance of our Deputy Minister for Energy and His Excellency, he will launch the 2019 report. I respectfully welcome and invite again the Deputy Minister for Finance, Honorable Dr. John Ampontia Kuma, to give us the keynote address. Let's welcome him with a very big round of applause.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, the Honorable Deputy Minister for Energy, my good friend and brother, Dr. Amin Anta, is also MP for Karaga, Ambassador Philip Sauder of Switzerland, and GIZ Country Director, ladies and gentlemen, representative from civil society, friends of the media, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to everyone. I extend warmest greetings from the Honorable Minister for Finance, Mr. Ken Oforiatta, on whose behalf I'm here this morning to launch the 2019 Ghana EITI reports for the mining, oil and gas sectors. First of all, I would like to commend the Ghana EITI Multi-Stakeholder Group, the MSG, all key players and our development partners for their unflinching support for the timely completion of the final reports. Our utmost gratitude goes to the GIZ and SECO for the financial assistance for the preparation of the 2019 Gheiti report for the mining and oil and gas sectors. Mr. Chairman, Ghana is endowed with mineral resources and has a well-established mining sector which has grown considerably in recent years to represent an important pillar of the Ghanaian economy. The mining sector currently contributes approximately 41% of total exports earnings, 14% of our total tax revenues, and 5.5% of total export earnings. 5.5% of Ghana's gross domestic product. Gold contributes over 90% of Ghana's total mineral exports and makes up 49% of the country's total export value. Ghana is the leading African gold producer with a total mine production amounting to 150 metric tons as at end 2020. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the most important comprehensive data on labor is found in the Ghana Living Standard Survey, GLSSS 7, that was conducted between 2016 and 2017 and was published in 2019. The survey shows that the mining sector accounts for 1.5% of the country's employed population. This indicates the critical role the mining sector plays in terms of employment generation in Ghana. Mr. Chairman, regards to the mineral royalty receipts, its share in total fiscal receipts attributable to the mining and quarrying sector increased from 25.1% in 2019 to 33.3% in 2020. The Bank of Ghana's statistics of merchandise exports showed that the mineral sector accounted for 48.4% of gross exports receipts in 2020, which was more than the combined contribution of cocoa and crude oil to merchandise exports. Mr. Chairman, in the oil and gas sector, a total revenue of 666,390,751 accrued to the state in the year 2020 from royalties, carried and participating interest, corporate income taxes, and surface rentals. The government also received $225,301 as income earned on Petroleum Holding Fund. The petroleum sector total receipt of 666 million in 2022 contributed 7% of total government, that is domestic revenue, for that year. A total of 3,711 employees were engaged in the upstream petroleum sector, 3,211 being Ghanaians and 500 expatriates, as part of efforts by government to reduce the unemployment rate in the country. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to inform you that the upstream oil and gas sector contributed 3.83% to the gross domestic product GDP of Ghana in 2020. Mr. Chairman, the contribution of the upstream oil and gas sector to energy generation in Ghana cannot be overemphasized. The gas produced from the sector is supplied for domestic power generation in the country. In 2020, a total of 88,515.58 million standard cubic feet of associated gas and non-associated gas produced from Jubilee, TEN, and SGN fields were supplied to various thermal plants in Ghana for domestic power generation. A total of 58,034 million standard cubic feet, MMSCF, has so far been produced from 2014 to 2020 and has been solely utilized for domestic power generation in Ghana. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as you are all aware, due to COVID-19, the government was given approval by Parliament of Ghana to reduce the cap on the stabilization fund from $300 million to $100 million in order to cream off 1.2 billion cedis as excess over the cap to fund the government's coronavirus alleviation program in 2020. Gas production in 2020 rose sharply because of the commercialization of natural gas in Ghana. Compared to 2019 production volume of 169,508.61, Ghana produced 237,962.82 MMSCF in 2020, representing a 40% increase. Mr. Chairman, given the enormous role the mining, oil, and gas sectors play in the natural resource sector of the Ghanaian economy, there has been a consistent call for a more transparent and judicious management of revenues from these sectors, from these strategic sectors, to ensure that natural resource revenues are publicly disclosed. Mr. Chairman, with the current challenges confronting the world as a result of the impact of COVID-19 and price volatility in the international commodity market as a result of the Russia-Ukraine war, the government of Ghana is tirelessly working to judiciously manage and utilize revenues from our extractive sectors for the benefit of our dear nation. Currently, the EITI, the Ghana EITI, with the support of multi-stakeholder group, have so far produced 16 EITI reports in the mining sector and 9 reports for the oil and gas sector, as have already been mentioned by earlier speakers. The findings and recommendations from these reports are very vital. Government has responded to some of the policy calls on the extractive sector. The recommendations of the EITI reports have informed policy direction and decision-making in the legislative, fiscal, and institutional dimensions of mining, oil, and gas sectors of Ghana. Mr. Chairman, I would like to end by stating that the 2019 mining, oil, and gas reports will be publicly available and accessible to the general public after the launch. I will urge all of you to familiarize yourselves with key issues highlighted in the reports. Government, with support from Gheiti Secretariat, will hold discussions and create avenues for stakeholders to deliberate on the content of the reports. These discussions will support government efforts to be more accountable in the use of resources from the extractive sectors. We believe that through a structured sensitization program of targeted key holders, will the issues be highlighted in the reports will be well disseminated, and the feedback will inform policy direction. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, at this point, I wish to pronounce the 2019 EITI reports on mining and oil and gas officially launched. Thank you for your maximum kind attention.
Let's appreciate the Honorable Minister once more, Mr. Ower. So, Honorable Minister, Honorable Deputy Minister, respectfully for the cameras, we'd like you to hold, yes, with the assistance of Honorable Deputy Minister for Energy and Your Excellency, can we be here so that the camera can capture it well for us? Oh, sorry. This is the launch of the 2019 Gheiti report, duly
oil and gas sector report. And then, Minister, what are you holding?
Thank you so much. Very big round of applause goes to you, Honorable Deputy Ministers of State, Your Excellency, and our Country Director for GIZ. Thank you so much for doing us the honor of launching it for us. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We continue with the program. Mr. Chairman, with your permission, we would like to continue with the presentations of the highlights of the report that has just been launched. And so, Honorable Deputy Ministers of State, Your Excellency, respectfully, I would like us to take the seat here, occupy the seat here, so we can enjoy the presentation that will be done by Boaz and Associates with Mr. Kweku Boa Amponsin leading us with the presentation. I don't know if Mr. Kweku Amponsin is here. All right. So Boaz and Associate will take us through the highlights of the presentation. So they start with the mining, right? And let me add that after the presentation, there will be group photo and health break for all of us. So let's
Okay, thank you very much. So, as has been introduced already, I'll be making a presentation on the highlights of the 2019 Gheiti report. That is mining sector report. So, the order of presentation will be objective of EITI and the objectives of the Gheiti report, just for the benefit of those who have not had the opportunity to attend any EITI workshop before, just briefly. Then some selected contextual information, then highlights of the 2019 reconciliation itself, then some recommendations. So the objectives of the EITI, there are several of them, but for the purpose of the reports, these are the objectives that are very relevant. So firstly, the EITI aims to enhance transparency around the generation and spending of revenues from the extractive sector. Then, improve development outcomes from payments made to governments by the extractive industries. Again, reduce potential for corruption and large-scale embezzlement of these payments. Then, lastly but not the least, to stimulate debates on the uses of these benefits. So, the monies that have been paid, what are we going to use them for? That is a subject of debate. So to achieve all this, you need to ensure that there is transparency around how these payments are made, how they are received, how they are disbursed and utilized. So what happens is that the payments are made by in this situation, the mining companies. Government agencies receive them. Some of the payments are sent back to the subnational communities. So in the mining sector in Ghana, there are two payments, and we will get the two payments. That is mineral royalty and ground rent. That is sent, part of it is sent back to the communities. That is the district assemblies, the stools, and the traditional authorities. We actually limit ourselves to district assemblies, what they get and what they use the monies for. So how much will be disbursed and how much are utilized, they all have to be transparently known. And that is the purpose of this EITI. So in order for you to ensure that the payments and the receipts, the disbursements and utilization have all been transparently done, there's the need for the EITI report. So the objectives of the EITI report, of Gheiti report, or Ghana Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative report, is to collect, analyze, and aggregate payments made by mining companies to government of Ghana, reconcile mining company submissions of mining payments to those received by the government. And as I said earlier, check disbursements and utilization of mineral royalty and ground rent. Then you utilize lessons learned from the reconciliation exercise to enhance transparency in all these sectors. That's payments, receipts, disbursements, and utilization. For 2019, this is the scope of work. I've been talking about payments and benefits, but there are specific payments that we considered. So we considered mineral right licenses, that is prospecting, mining lease. These are payments made to the Minerals Commission. Then we have other fees and licenses made to the Minerals Commission. If you go to the report, that one is about Appendix 2. So you have fees like permit fees, examination fees, and all that. They are all lumped together. Individually, those payments are not substantial, but if you group them, they are substantial, and you can't just leave them. So other fees and licenses. Then you have ground rent, property rates, mineral royalties, corporate taxes, forestry royalty, dividends, environmental permitting fees. Oh, actually, the second one is environmental processing fees. Yeah, so that is it. These are mining sector fiscal regime. Actually, this gives rise to the payments. So you know that mineral right license, you have it there, you have capital allowance, you have carried forward losses, you have corporate income tax. Mineral royalty is 5% on gross revenue, except for some companies with stability or development agreements where they use a sliding scale of 3 to 5%. So this is what actually informs the payments that are made. Then you have export in 2018 and 2019, they are all in the report. I think it's been mentioned already. And export earnings. So we are now going into the actual reconciliation. So what happens is that, just a minute. Yeah. We used companies, because the companies in the mining sector are many. So we used materiality tests. And for 2019, the report was based on, or the selection was based on companies that paid at least 5 million Ghana cedis in all the payments that we listed. If a company paid 5 million Ghana cedis or more of the payments that are listed earlier, then it will qualify to be part of the reconciliation exercise. And what you do in the reconciliation exercise is you check what the companies paid for those revenue streams and what the government agencies also report that or reported receiving, and you check if there are any differences. The cash basis is used for the reconciliation, and what it means is that for 2019, we are just talking about payments that were made from 1st January 2019 to 31st December 2019. Cash basis, not what the companies intended to pay or what they should have paid. It is actually what they paid, because you are going to reconcile with the government side. And if the payments were not made, you can't ask the government side to also give you what they received. So the government side is giving you what it received. So it is only what the companies actually paid that you use. So these are the companies that we selected. There are about 14, and 12 of them are gold mining companies, except for manganese, Ghana Manganese, and Ghana Bauxite Company. All the rest are gold mining companies. Unfortunately, 2 of them did not report. They were selected, but Ghana Bauxite and Golden Star Wasa did not report for the exercise. That means they were not part of it. So the reconciliation, what we do is we have reconciliation by revenue streams. As I said, I listed the payments that we were going to consider. So those payments, you check all the amount that the companies have paid and you compare to what the government side also said it received. So that is reconciliation by revenue streams. Then we also have reconciliation by companies. That means you check all the payments that the companies have made, and you also check for that particular company all the amounts that the government agencies are also saying they have collected. Then you compare. So that is reconciliation by companies. Discrepancy, that is the difference. And for this report, we had a discrepancy of about 5,619,446. That is net discrepancy. And normally, what happens is that when you start the reporting, some of them will report. There are some companies that will report probably using accruals, what the accountants will call accruals. So, for example, I'll give you an example. If the company thinks, from January to December, it was supposed to make payment on royalty of a certain amount, say 100,000. Sometimes they make a mistake and put the 100,000 there. But we are interested in only what was actually paid, not what you were supposed to pay. So that one can create the discrepancy or the difference. Another reason for the discrepancy is that some of the companies use the US dollars for reporting. As far as the mining sector report is concerned, we are using cedis in reporting because most of the payments are denominated in cedis. So what happens is that because you are having different companies using their own exchange rates, sometimes when you compare with what the government is also having, then there's a discrepancy. So these discrepancies are resolved. And the purpose, the MSG, that the multi-stakeholder group, is also there to assist and when these discrepancies come. So when there's time, you resolve all. But during the report, because we have limited time, you resolve as many as you can. And for this one, the discrepancy just represented 0.14% of the total government receipts that we reported. So it was reasonable. Normally, you don't have to go beyond 1%, even during the reporting time. So this one was just 0.14. So it was okay for the time. So these are the discrepancies or the differences. And what we do is that if the company's amount exceeds the government reported amount, then that discrepancy will be positive because the company is more than government. If, on the other side, if government said it has received more than even the company itself is saying it has paid, then that one is a negative discrepancy. So if you see the negative and the positive, that's the purpose. So for the companies, these were the unresolved discrepancies at the time of completing the report. So you see that for the revenue streams, the biggest of them was corporate tax, and it formed about 55.25%, followed by mineral royalty, 37.9%, and dividends, 2.89%, and the rest were not very significant. So it's corporate tax, mineral royalty, and dividends. Those were the significant ones. So that has been presented here. So we have finished with the collection of the monies or the collection of the payments. Now we are going to the level of disbursement. So you find the report, disbursement of ground rent paid by mining companies and received by the Office of the Administrator of Stool Lands. So it's the Office of the Administrator of Stool Lands that collects ground rent and distributes same to the communities that the mining companies operate. So the ground rent is paid by the mining company, and a portion is given to the communities within the operational area of that particular company. So if you look at it, you see that when a company pays ground rent, 10% of it is kept by the OSL for administrative expenses. Then, of the remaining 55% of it, or 49.5% of the overall payment is given to district assemblies. Then stools gets 25% of the 90%, which is 22.5% of the original payment. Then traditional councils get this. As I said earlier, our emphasis in the report is on district assemblies. We don't look at stools and traditional councils. We deal with district assemblies because they are working for the government, and we look at them. So what we do is we check the ground rent. So this one is for the Ashanti region, and this is the payment made by Anglo Gold Ashanti. And you see the day that it was released, disbursed, paid, and all that. If you go into the report, because these are highlights, we will have to do computations to check if what the companies paid and what the OSL distributed to the district assembly is about the same. We do the computation to check that. In fact, the EITI standard also requires that you use the formula that I have indicated earlier, to check if the payments done were appropriately done. And so if you go into the report, you will see something like amount due based on the computations and amount actually paid, also based on the payments that were made, and you can compare. That particular computation helps the district assemblies to also know whether what they have received is appropriately what they should have received, based on the formula. So we do that. So that is for Bono region, and that's payment from Newmont. I think it's not very clear. We have Central region payment. We have Eastern region, that is Newmont Golden Ridge Limited payment. Mind you, we are just dealing with payments from the selected companies, not all mining companies. So the selected companies, their payments that they made. So for Eastern region, Newmont Golden Ridge was the selected company in the Eastern region. So we will go around and see which district assembly, that is Brim North District Assembly what it received. Then the traditional authority understood. But as I said, our emphasis is on the District Assembly. So we have a computation that will show if the Brim North District Assembly actually received this amount and whether the amount was what should have been received. So we have Western North, and we have for the various Golden Star resource. We have Anglo Gold Ashanti, we have Goldfields Daman, we have Goldfields Takwa. So these are the payments they made and their distribution. So all of them are in the report. So there's ground rent. We'll finish. As I said, we have ground rent and royalty. These are the two revenue streams that are distributed to the communities. So if you come to mineral royalty, so I'll finish with ground rent. If you come to mineral royalty, you're having, when the companies make the payment, they make it to Ghana Revenue Authority, the Ministry of Finance, then payments are made to Mineral Development Fund. The Mineral Development Fund also gives mining sector institutions, such as Minerals Commission, Lands and Natural Resource Ministry, and some for research. So they also pay. Then they also have something for the Mining Community Development Scheme. This is a new one. About 20% of the monies received by the Mineral Development Fund is given to the Mining Development Community Scheme. And those schemes were set up. In fact, during 2019, no payment was actually made. The companies or the local management committees were rather inaugurated. And when we go down the street, you'll see the companies that were inaugurated. Having said that, this part, I think this was because we are dealing with the 2019 report, but for 2020 onwards, I think the payments, I think these payments are being made to MEF. The royalty payment is being made to Mineral Income Investment Fund. So they rather pay the Mineral Development Fund, then all this can continue. So that is the disbursement formula for mineral royalties. We had that one. We had one for the ground rent, but this one is for the mineral royalty. So once the monies are received by the fund, and by the fund I mean the Mineral Development Fund, and it's actually 20% of royalty that goes to the Mineral Development Fund. 50% of that amount, which essentially is 10%, goes to the Office of the Administrator of Two Lands and disbursed as prescribed by law. Then 20% Mining Community Development Fund, 4% Mining Ministry, 13% Minerals Commission, Geological Survey. These are the institutions that receive the royalties. So I've already indicated the formula. So for the district assemblies, it means that of all the payments made by the mining company within their vicinity, they will get effectively 4.95% of royalty paid by the mining company operating in the community or within the vicinity of the district assembly. Except that on some occasions, you will have more than one district assembly within the catchment area of the mine. In that case, there's a formula that they use depending on where the activities are greatest. I mean, they will give more money to where they have more mining activity and a little less. So 4.95 is what we will look at for district assembly. So what we will do is to check, and those ones are all indicated in the report. So for all the selected mining companies and the district assemblies within their areas, we will check and find out if this formula was followed by comparing with what the companies actually paid as royalty. So these were some of the disbursements from head office to the regions. Eastern, Western, so all those have been captured. So these are mineral royalty disbursement. Mineral royalty disbursement. Yeah. So once they have been dispersed to the various district assemblies, the regions, it is just going there for onward distribution to the district assemblies. The regions are not really receiving the money. It's just for administrative purpose. But the money is actually going to the district assemblies. So this one is utilization. And this one is for Ashanti. And this one is, I think, Asunafi South. That is what they use their monies for. And this one is for Brunhafu Asutifi North. That's royalties from Newmont, Ghana. That is received by the district assembly. And this is what they use their monies for. This one is also to afford transparency for the districts. Normally, when we go to the districts for sensitization, the districts, the people there in the districts are very interested in these ones because they want to know if these utilizations have actually been done. In fact, we had a situation where in one of the district assemblies, the people said no. I think it was Obuasi or something. This one, you didn't use royalty money to do it. So they have to challenge it. It was not royalty money. So, but this one, we asked all of district assemblies to give us what they've used their royalty money for. And this is utilization, Upper West, the Intrada Central region, what they received, and what they use their monies for. And this is Takwan Suayim. So we try to capture one from each region, but the full, the whole of the district assemblies that were part of the reporting, all their utilizations have been captured in the report. Then this one is payments to mining community development. As I said, there was no actual payment. These were actually dates of inauguration. These were days, the local management committees were rather inaugurated during these times. November 19th, 21st November 2019. So in 2019, the mining community development schemes did not receive cash, but they were inaugurated. So going forward, I'm sure a lot of, no, this is not the original one. This one is not the one I copied today. This is not the one I copied today. This one is supposed to. This is not the one I copied today. Yeah. Actually, the next stage is the reporting. Is the recommendations, and I can, although they don't seem to be here, the first recommendation was that there's LI 1349. LI 1349 talks about when royalty payments are made. Currently, that LI indicates that the payment should be made quarterly. That means if even the mining companies are making, receiving monies or making exports on a monthly basis or even weekly basis, they have to hold on the money until 3 months before it is paid. The EITI had made earlier recommendations that that payment should be made monthly. Indeed, some of the mining companies actually pay monthly, some of the large ones, but that is not the law. So we are recommending that the law should be amended so that each and every mining company will be required to actually make the payment monthly instead of keeping on the money till 3 months. And I'm sure the government needs money as quickly as possible. So that is one of the recommendations. The other recommendation has something to do more with the EITI transparency. The Minerals Commission has established, a database where you can get all the details of mining concessions, when they were taken and when they were expired. But the EITI also requires that, in addition to that, if there is termination or if there are transfers of concessions, that should also be indicated on the database. So far, the Minerals Commission has not added that. So our recommendation is that those ones should also be captured as well. Not only the database on the concession owners and when they are going to expire, but the ones that have expired and the ones that have been transferred. If during the year a concession was transferred from one company to another, you have to have that database so that we know and possibly give indication of how much was the consideration for the transfer for transparency's sake. So that one should be added. Then thirdly, there's also a recommendation on the transfers to the district assemblies. As I said, we check year by year which monies that the district assemblies received and what they have used it for. What we gathered was that some of the district assemblies, if they receive some money in, say, 2018, they report it in 2019, which makes it difficult for anyone checking, looking at the transparency of the whole thing. Yeah. This one. No, get it. Yeah, so, well, actually, I think that's the last one. So that one is for the district assemblies to really be concise with the timing of the money that they receive. Their reporting should be exact. If you receive this money in 2018, let us know it is in 2018. Some of them, when we're doing the 2019 one, they will just lump the 2018 and 2019 receipts altogether. But because we have made computations to indicate which one was, so transfer to some regional OSL offices included transfers received in 2018 as part of the 2019 receipts. This was because some amounts received in 2018 were disbursed in 2019. So it creates confusion and it does not, help in transparency. So that is what we said. Then also the utilization, because they have reported it together, you wouldn't really know which ones you received from 2018, what you have used it for, and the one you received in 2019, what you have used it for. So we want that separation. These were the three recommendations that I have put for the highlights, but there are some recommendations also there. Apart from that, there is a recommendation, if you look at the report, the previous recommendations that have been made but have not been implemented, they have all been listed, and there are several of them. So for the highlights, I think I will end here. Thank you very much.
For 2019. For the mining, we saw the various revenue streams, but that of oil and gas, slightly different. You have royalty, you have carried interests, additional participating interests, surface rentals, being acreages for the various exploration companies, and then the data license and corporate tax, that is the taxes from companies for their incomes, and then training and technology allowance and gas revenues. And of course, there are processing fees and permit fees that are granted by EPA. In 2019, the state got revenues for these various revenue streams, royalties, carried interest, and participating interests. And the government also had incomes from the Petroleum Holding Fund, almost about 2.5. The petroleum receipts, of course, excludes 25 million that was paid by Nadaku, which erroneously went into GRA instead of what it should have been in December 2019, but that has been rectified since. It comes to the national export, that is the total export from all the companies, trying to compare that of 2019 with 2018 and even the preceding years. For oil, you see that there's a slight increase in quantities, and the price also slightly goes down to 64 from 70. And then the value was also about 4.5 billion as compared to 4.3 in 2018. That of the gas also shot up from 230 million US dollars to that of 319 million US dollars. And just by way of note, that for the mining was in cedis, but that of the oil and gas is purely in US dollars. Now, when it comes to the disaggregation by project levels, that is the field levels of the various operations, Jubilee, the value was about 2 billion, 10, 1.4, Sankofa, GMA, 1.1, and the total was about 4.5 billion. And that is what you also have for the gas by way of project levels. When it comes to the way the receipts of government were distributed in various units, the government in 2019 had 937 million US dollars as the total revenues. That's the total benefits. And this compares favorably with that of 2018. 2018 was 977.12. 2019, 937. So you see that there was a slight reduction of almost about 4% between that of 2018 and 2019. When it comes to distribution by revenue streams, you see that CAPI, that's the carried and participating interest, also decreased from 56.12% in 2018 to 53 in 2019. Then also, when it comes to corporate tax, the corporate income tax, it went on the contrary. It increased from 16.4% to 20%. So 2018 was 16.4 and 2019 was 20.39. Royalty, as a total, we had about 25%. When we take the total government receipts, government revenues, royalty constituted 25.26%. And of course, this has increased to reduced to 25 from 27.19 in 2018. Of course, there were no gas receipts accounted in 2019. As we continue with the petroleum receipts, the way they were distributed, in 2019, GMPC was allocated 260.56 million, and that was 155 million as equity financing, and then 105 also for net CAPI. And then out of the 925 million that was earmarked for the distribution, BFA, that's the annual budget funding amount, received 395. And then the Ghana Petroleum Funds, that's the Heritage and Stabilization in total, also received 269 million US dollars. And when you split it down, you have stabilization receiving 180 8.3 million, and then the Ghana Heritage Fund also receiving 80 million US dollars in 2019. So as we've indicated, the petroleum holding funds, that the two funds, stabilization and heritage, together had 269. You see that it is, when we compare that to 2018, 2018 had 436.75. So this comprised of the heritage fund, which was 80 as against 131 in 2018. So when you try to isolate them into various funds, heritage had 131 in 2018, but it slowed down to 80 in 2019. And then when it comes to the stabilization fund, it received 188.3 million in 2019 as against 305 in 2019. So you see that there has been a slowdown in the allocations of funds. FBFA also had the 395 million as against 235 in 2018. GMPC, as I've already indicated, had 260 million as against 305 in 2018. The cap was placed on 300 million as mandated by law. So the total, as a result, 283 million, which was in excess of the capping amount, was transferred to the sinking fund, of course, for debt repayment and other things. So, but when it comes to 2019, they had to transfer 189 million US dollars to the sinking fund, compared to that of 283 in 2018. Now, when it comes to how we determine the selection of the companies, there are a lot of exploration and producing companies. So we try to zoom in, because even though the numbers are great, only a few contribute a significant amount to the government kitty. So the coverage of the selected companies was about 98.22%. And the number of companies that came under our lens for this particular exercise, that is 2019 reconciliation exercise, was seven companies. And these companies are Tullow, Anadarko, Cosmos, ENI, Vitol, and Petroleum, Petro SA. So these are their payments to government. GMPC, 545, Tullow, 66, Anadarko, 36, and the total is about 5.2 million. And these are the percentages by weights, and they are, of course, cumulative. So you see that Tullow contributed about 71%. Sorry, GMPC 71%, and then Tullow 80%. So that is the cumulative weights. So GMPC 71, Tullow 8, and Anadarko 4. So adding them up, you get a cumulative weight as you get along. And the total is about 98%. This is the reconciliation table, how it looks like for all the companies, the payments made by the various oil companies compared to the government receipts. And you see that the first column, that is the initial amount of companies. The second column is the resolved. So if there were any issues that came or arose from the payments, we try to resolve them. For Cosmos, Tullow, GMPC. And then the second part of the sheet is the government receipts. So the first part is the company's contribution or payments, and then the government receipts. So we try to reconcile the two, and if there are differences, of course, we determine discrepancy. So for Cosmos, Tullow, GMPC, others, there were virtually no discrepancies. That of Tullow was about 590,000. There weren't any discrepancy for Petro SA. ENI was 694. So the total came to about 1.2 million. So that was the reported differences between company payments and then government receipts. And the explanations and the basis for them are well explained in the report. So the first one was for companies. Now, the second one is by revenue streams. It's the same figures, but tilted in a different angle and disaggregated by revenue streams. So you see that carried interest, there was nothing to be resolved by way of discrepancy. Participating interest, royalty, none of them. It's only the training and technology allowance and the data license that had the discrepancy. Now the outcomes. You see that the discrepancy was about 1.2 million US dollars. The difference between the absolute and then the net is what Mr. Boa explained. It's virtually arithmetic, science. One is negative and one is positive. Try to balance them up. So in total, it constituted 0.15% of government receipts. Normally by EITI standards, it shouldn't go more than 1%. So instead it was far below 1%. So the reason is that if it goes too low, there wouldn't be much need to investigate because it is not worth the effort because they are small figures. Well, even though we would try, as a country to go further and make sure everything balances, but it's not really very critical. But at the end of the day, we try to resolve them so that it comes to 0.0. So it represents 0.14 of the payment used in the materiality threshold determination. That is when we started off. We tried to get all the payments put together, and that is where we start off. And then finally, after the resolution of discrepancies too, the percentage came down to 0.08, so which was quite good. Some of the resolutions, some of the things that we did during the discrepancy resolutions were the surface rentals received by GRA was not reported, so we had to resolve it and make sure that we credit Cosmos for the payment that they had. The same for Tallow and then Petroleum Commission, and then the same for EPA, and then the same for ENI. So these were all figures that were erroneously, allocated to different entities, which we had to reverse to make sure that it balances very well. There were unresolved discrepancies at the end of the exercise, and that totaled 1.2. And the reasons or those attributions to discrepancies were all explained in the report. So that one was, this one was by revenue streams. So in total, this is how it fared well. Carried interest was 380, participating interest, royalties, surface rentals, and the total came to 864 for the purposes of materiality threshold determination. Now, for recommendations. Some of the companies did not report, did not issue their templates to the reconciler or the independent administrator. And those ones were Anadarko, Petro SA, and Vitor. And the total came to about, that is their total contribution was about 74 million US dollars, even though the government declared that unilateral payments. And that 74 million constituted about 7.9, almost about 8% of the total receipts, which was used for materiality determination. So it was quite colossal. So we recommended that the lack of reporting of these companies had a material effect on the coverage because 8% was quite good, quite big. So we recommended that tremendous effort should be made by the MSG to ensure that all the companies, especially those ones that made material payments, within a specific year, are made to complete their template in good time so that it could be part of the reconciliation exercise. Some of the outcomes of the 2019, there was a decline in prices in 2019, and that resulted in the amounts that the government received. There was a 10% decline in the achieved price in 2019 compared to that of 2018. 2018 was about 70, and 2019 was about $63 per barrel. And that accounted for the difference in, or the shortfall to the revenues in 2019 attributed to government. Even though there was an increase in lifting volumes from 9.7 million to 12.7 million in 2019, even though there was an increase, it could not compensate for the shortfall in the pricing. So that's why the total amount that came to the state was still very low. Corporate tax collections increased by 22% between 2018 and 2019. That of the training and technology fees also increased by 3%. It's quite marginal. And the EPA also basking in about 200% increase in their fees that they collect, even though the amounts collected are small compared to the total amount that we're talking about. They are not significant. So, this is a graphical representation of how 2019 and 2018 fared by way of the revenue streams. Carried interest, the red one is the 2019 and the blue one is the 2018. You see that there is a slowdown in carried interest, there's a slowdown in participating interest, the same for royalties. Surface rentals is virtually insignificant. These are the exploration fees that the companies pay. Compared to the other revenue streams, they are not very significant. Corporate tax rather went to the other side, and there was an increase in 2019. So this is how graphically we can represent that. Going on the recommendations, Ghana Gas, we advise that they routinely provide data and information on their transportation revenues, the pipelines, and then the way they pump. Some of the revenues, accrued to those pipeline transportations or the gas transportation through the pipes, as well as other infrastructure. They have to disclose them, at least, if not to other agencies, on their website, so that it could be part of the MSG's mainstreaming. You go to the MSG's website, you should be able to know that for the particular year, this is what Ghana Gas got from transportation. This is how the amount they got from gas. All these things should be well disaggregated so that you can get all the data in a glance, on the website of Ghana Gas. That was what we recommended. The second or the third recommendation was the level of disaggregation. And when you go to the Petroleum website, Petroleum Commission website, it's so beautiful. It's such an enhancement from before. You can get data on contract areas, you can get data on oil block agreements. So fantastic. It's very, very nice. But what we went on to recommend is that there should be some link between these data that exists, in disjointed units. So at least there should, if you clock into a particular field of operation, let's say Jubilee, you should be able to get production to date. You should manage, values. You should get, if you want the agreement, of course, which is there, but there should be a link between the contract area and the agreements with that of payments and production, as well as other information that are recommended by EITI. Even though what is there is quite very beneficial, we are advising that they enhance it with more linkages, so that just by the click of a button, you can access so much information for your benefit. And then our last recommendation was to GMPC and NGRA. GMPC, when you go into the audited books, you see that quite large sums of money, are due them by way of refunds, loan repayments that are due, that are still, outstanding. Quite good money. And some of these things, some of the transactions, they border on quasi-fiscal expenditures, and which of course EITI discourages. So what we recommend is that the government sits down with GMPC and draw, a comprehensive repayment plan, because with all these refunds that have been existing in their books since 2016, some of them 2015, 2017, and they are still in the books. So GMPC needs money, to continue with their operations, at least to position themselves very well for the future market rigors. So we recommend that the government sits down with GMPC and reconcile and draw a plan for the repayment of these loans as well as the other refunds. And then the last one was about GRA. GRA, according to the Petroleum Revenue Management Act, they are to assess and they are to collect and they are to account. But then during the reconciliation exercise, we realized that some of the information requested from GRA was not forthcoming. Apparently, they did not get it from other agencies. So we recommend that there should be that multi-sectorial, collaboration, so that when we go to GRA, you can get all the information that you want, because they are mandated by law to get all this information and account for them. So they shouldn't, so that even though the Bank of Ghana would report on the Petroleum Holding Fund amount, when you go to GRA, there should be that same amount well accounted for, so that you can get all the information that you require at a click of a button. So that is our last recommendation for GRA and then GMPC. Thank you very much.
And Associate for that wonderful presentation, giving us insight and comprehensive presentation on what the report is all about. In a short while, we shall go for our health break. But before we do that, I would like to invite our Deputy Minister for Energy to make a short submission before he leaves us for another program.
Thank you. Just a little contribution. And this were not part of my speech because I have not negotiated those issues with my boss. so I'm speaking for myself now. So the materiality scope, the definition of that, I don't know if EITI, Steve, you can say better, if EITI has a definition for the scope, or it's just left to the reporting country to decide, or the consultant to decide. Yes. How is it defined? The standards, if you can explain that for me. If you can, the standards say materiality, but yes.
2019 standards, and as was reported, I think one of your speeches, they were saying the standard is even under review now. So the standard is reviewed regularly. Right now, what we used was the 2019 standard. And you have to go through. This one will be dealing with about standard 4.1, which deals with comprehensive reporting of revenue streams. And it's a standard. You go there and it shows you what to do.
But that is my problem, because it's like, why do we have that standard, materiality? Is it to sacrifice transparency and accountability for time and space? Because every dollar, every cent, every city that is paid by a company and received by the state must be accounted for. It is so important. And so if it is to sacrifice transparency and accountability for space and time, then we need to look at it again.
Well, Mr. Minister, I think what is happening is we work within a very short time. It's a limited period. And obviously, you don't have all the time to do so. It's like being very effective. But I think that is why this mainstream reporting is being encouraged by the EITI. In that case, every company will have to put its own figures on the website. And at the same time, the government will have to put everyone's. But when it comes to reconciliation, obviously, if you want to spend time, of course, it's money, $1. But if you want to spend a time, 1 hour, maybe you're paying a consultant a certain amount and you're looking for $1. I mean, obviously.
Transparency and accountability is expensive. I don't think we should pay lip service to it. It's very expensive. And so if we agree to be transparent and to be accountable, whatever time you need, however little the money is. Because this is what promotes petty corruption. And petty corruption, the multiplicity of it, if you put them together, it becomes big. So I think that we should look at it. There may be good reasons for the materiality, but I think that every dollar, every city needs to be accounted for. The second issue is the energy transition. I chair the National Committee on Energy Transition, and I've been getting worried about things I read globally as far as the oil and gas industry is concerned. Today we are producing oil and we are doing reconciliation. If the industry collapses, we will not be reporting on that. And so I want to call on the MSG to make a special case to the EITI board not to allow the industry to collapse, especially for developing countries. Because most of the developed countries, they've developed their economies with fossil fuel. And we have just discovered them. And this is why we're talking about just, equitable, and fair transition. And so funding is currently declining for oil and gas projects just because of that transition. So if we can make a case for projects in Africa or the developing world to continue to receive funding, but use the EITI to require these countries to report on mitigation measures they are implementing in order to reduce carbon emission. I think it could be, yes, a good basis for financiers to be convinced. One is coming through the EITI, which is a very credible platform. I think that, financiers should feel okay to continue to fund this industry so that we don't lose the opportunity that we have. My third issue, which I also want to appeal to the MSG to take up upstairs, is about asset declaration. And so we have been talking about beneficial ownership. Companies must report on their beneficial ownership. Is it not also about time we began discussing the need for public servants involved in the management of these natural resources to also declare their assets, which will be published as part of the EITI reports? This is not a very friendly proposition, especially for most people who do not want the public to know their assets. But I think that if we can ask all public servants to publish, those who sign natural resource contracts on behalf of the people, the ministers and the CEOs and the chief directors who sign these petroleum contracts on behalf of the country, I think that's why I said I haven't discussed this with my bosses to get clearer. So they are my personal views. Because really, if we see the assets of somebody who has signed a petroleum contract change significantly over a shorter period of time, there may be cause to find out why. And so the Minerals Commission boss is here. He may not be happy about this proposition, but I think that just asking companies to report on beneficial owners on the company side without asking for the government side to also declare assets, particularly for those involved in signing those contracts, I think doesn't complete the equation. So we may have to look at that, Though this is limited somehow, because most of the public servants who negotiate their interests, they recover it long after they have left office, isn't it? Because these are usually long-term contracts, which survives the political tenures. And so you have 4 years in office, but you sign a contract whose benefits will start coming from 8 years. The asset declaration may not resolve that entirely, but it would be a deterrent for those who are signing these contracts to know that they are being watched. And that could help in reducing the rent-seeking behavior of most public servants. So thank you so much for the opportunity. I will beg to leave at this point.
Thank you so much, Honorable Deputy Minister for Energy. Yes, thank you. I'd like to acknowledge the presence of UNICEF. UNICEF is represented here. Thank you so much for coming. And in a short while, we shall go for our health break and group picture. But before we do that, permit me to invite the Chief Executive Officer for the Minerals Commission to give us a short remarks, Mr. Martin Ayisi. So let's welcome him as he comes to give us that short remarks before we go for our health break.
Thank you very much. I had to pass through the hospital. I had some typhoid and I double checked and it's still not cleared. I don't know why. I've never had typhoid in my 52 years life, but then once I got it, it's refusing to go away. I have a very brief remark. I've known Boaz for centuries. My remarks are very short. When this process started, I think we started with disclosure of what? Receipts, right? How much do you get? Or how much is the government getting? How much the companies are paying? Disaggregated by the various, whatever payment we've been seeing. Then we got into the realm of contract disclosures. Yes, I see a lot of contracts on the website of Petroleum Ministry, Petroleum Commission, and even Minerals Commission. The amendments we've made to the law captures that strongly. But ahead of that, we've started publishing. But what, over the years, I have not seen strongly, which we should also be adding as a third leg, is what some of us would call transparency in the contracting process. If you read Boaz's report over the years, yes, he's been saying that, look, we don't get some of the receipts we get because of the kind of contract we've signed. So we see stability agreements lock in there. We see development agreements lock in there. Thankfully, the engagement we had last year on the law, we decided to stop development agreements. And also perhaps do away with stability and focus on maybe the capital recovery period. Because look, if somebody is bringing in $10 billion, so I'll give you a practical example, like Wasam Mine, okay? They're going to do $1 billion investment over the next 3 years. And then it will extend life of the mine by 17 years. It will be the biggest mine in Ghana. Obuasi will be a pay schedule of itself. Now they run their models, they tell you maybe $1,500 an ounce. And then based on, let's say, a 5% royalty. Then we get up overnight and say now royalty is 6.5 or 7% or whatever. Remember, the cost profile of each company is not the same. You could get companies producing an ounce of gold as low as 800, 850 to even about 1,800. There are some companies, the price of gold should fall by $200 today. They have to shut down. $1,000 most will go away. So what am I trying to say? I have never seen a thorough, detailed discussion as to how the questioning the processes of how the contracts are awarded. Because why are you telling me that if the contracts are done properly, government should be getting, let's say, $5 billion. But because they've locked in some stability or they've negotiated some other special rates or whatever, we're getting $3 billion. But you have never taken pains to find out or question how you could get the public involved from the very day somebody pick up a tenement or apply for it until it's ratified by Parliament. I think it's high time that debate is done properly so that we start whatever. I think 2-3 years ago or 5 years ago, I remember one of the oil blocks when it was negotiated. Then they published it in the papers before they took it to Parliament. Okay? That's the kind of thing that we're talking about years back before you read that it's even in the Parliamentary Committee on Mines and Energy. But I think that was put in the papers, that this is what has been negotiated by government. And people started reacting. I think later on it has to be taken back or something of that nature. So we're seeing progress, but I want us to see more focus on how the very contracts that generate all these kinds of receipts you are being told are done. How involved is the public. In other jurisdictions, Parliament, for example, is bound to listen to certain kinds of people, hear them out, and then get them involved. You even, rather than, let's say, the committee meeting, they meet one or two people, and then they submit their report, and the entire House ratifies. And then 5 years down the line, if 10 years you are not getting cooperators, then you start asking yourself, why? Maybe it's because of the way the contracts are negotiated. So for me, what gives birth to all these receipts you are talking about is what we should be questioning in more detail than just coming here and say, Tyler pay royalty, this, we got this amount, this person got this amount. Without asking ourselves how we got the 2 cities or 5 cities. Perhaps it should have been 10 cities. We are not asking too many questions about that. And we think mere disclosures of contracts will do the trick. But it's not enough. The contracts are there, Petroleum Commission website, Minerals Commission website. You read them, and so what? You critique, you criticize, we may have to change the rules. It depends on how forcefully the argument is made, or how we think that the state is being shortchanged, depending on the debates we are seeing. But I think the time has now come now to situate the issue properly. Let's ask ourselves more questions. How involved are we in the kind of contracts we negotiate? As I said, just to wrap up, this development agreement that some of us don't want to even hear of are now going to be a thing of the past. So that is out of the window now, once the amendments are taken to Parliament. Stability, 15 years, we're no longer going to see them. So these are changing thanks to all these arguments we've had over the years. Those are the criticisms that came up. But then it's not enough to say, okay, now if you submit your feasibility, you are going to get, what do you call it, some kind of a period for you to be able to recover your cost, whether it should be 2 or 3 years. We should just wake up and grant the 2 years. You ask yourself, must you actually even do it? Or is it even necessary? So if he tells you, look, he can recover his cost within a year, do you have to give him 5 years? Or there are a whole lot of things we need to start discussing now. So to wrap up, let us go beyond just mere disclosure of receipts, payments, and putting contracts out there to we questioning and asking for more transparency and accountability in what goes into arriving the very paper generating those receipts. Thank you.
Let's put our hands together for the Chief Executive Officer for making time from the hospital to be with us. It shows how committed you are to the cause of Ghana and our transparency initiative you are trying to put together. At this point, we shall all move out for the group picture, after which we'll have our health break and then come back for the discussion. I promise you it won't be a lengthy discussion. We shall leave here right after the discussion. So let's move out for the group picture with the Honorable Deputy Minister, our Chief Executive, our country rep for the GIZ, after which we have our minerals there. We take something, we stretch small, then come back for the discussions. Thank you so much. And it's a 15 minutes break. 15 minutes break, so. In the next few minutes, we are saying goodbye, we are leaving here. But before we do that, let's spend some few minutes to discuss the presentation. That's the only thing we are doing now. The presentation on the highlights of the report. So our presenters are here. Any question? The Honorable Deputy Minister set the tone for the discussion. So you have a question, you raise your hand up, you show us where you come from, and then please, yes, the microphone, yes, please, you mention your name and where you come from so that we acknowledge you.
No, I need a clarification next, and then the following ones I'll be answering the questions. Okay. My name is Alan Lassie from Talo. I've been part of this process, so I shouldn't be asking this question, but because it's new to me, that's what I'm going to seek clarification on. On the oil and gas report, and I'm asking this question because there's media here, so we don't send a wrong reportage out there. It was shown that the discrepancy, and it's against Talo's name, about 500 something. I don't know whether it's in dollars or it's in cedis. But it's worth explaining what that discrepancy is so that we don't find in the media that there's discrepancy and you find Talo's name headlined. So it's important that the presenter clarifies what discrepancy is. It will help.
Okay, thank you. We have two, then we give the mic to the presenters to address them. So we take two questions, we address them, two questions, and we move on. So you are...
Okay, thank you very much. Two questions, one on mining and one on oil and gas. The mining question has to do with the accountability for the 20% mineral royalties that is transferred to the MDF. The question I want to ask is, why are we not equally transparent about the 80% that is transferred to the Mineral Income Investment Fund and then to government? Because if you come and you list projects that district assemblies have done with some 25% of the revenue, which is actually around 10% or less, and then you do not tell me what projects you've done with the over 80% of the rest of the revenues, I feel like you are focusing on the minors rather than the majors. And so that is my clarification here I'm seeking. Why are we not accounting for the 80%? On the oil and gas front, we know that the training and technology allowances that are paid to Petroleum Commission and GNPC do not go into the Petroleum Holding Fund. And so technically they are not petroleum revenue that go to the state and should be treated as monies that go to the state. I'm surprised to see that they are diligently accounted for as, but is it time to probably consider passing them through the PHF and maybe disbursing to the Petroleum Commission and the GNPC, or on the other hand, we take them out of the accountability processes so that it doesn't appear as if that money goes to government and goes through the PHF. The reason I'm making that point is that if you go to the mining sector, I'm sure they also receive such fees. But I didn't see that accounted for as part of the mining sector report. And so I'm surprised to see that accounted for in the oil and gas sector as if they were revenues that go to the government.
All right, thank you. Then the last question or comment before we give the microphone to our presenters to take us through. Okay. So we hand the microphone to our speakers to give us answers to the questions raised. So we start with the oil and gas, after which we go to the mining. Yes.
I'd like to respond to the question about accounting for the other 80%. Until recently, that 80% was accounted for through the national budget. So you find that when you set aside the 20%, the other 80% went through the budget and spent on government's programs. It was difficult to track that 80% through the budget because of the manner of its application. I mean, it didn't have any color within the budget, unlike the petroleum revenues, which has a color, and the color is ABFA. So then you can track the ABFA particular expenditures and report on that. Now, going forward, I think in the 2016 manifesto of the current government, they pledged to actually replicate the framework for oil in the mining sector. Unfortunately, what we got is MEF, which is purely an investment vehicle. The MSG has taken note and has written to MEF and also MDF and all the new creatures of law in the space to come on board the EITI. And surely with our next report, we're going to track the MEF expenditures. It's an investment vehicle, so we'll be looking at what kinds of investments they are making, and we'll be reporting on them. We'll also be questioning some of the investments in terms of, from the value for money perspective, what kinds of returns we expect and all that, and maybe profess some suggestions in terms of how to improve on their functions. Going forward, and this is a long term, and it's an issue for CSOs to take up. The MEF arrangement, if you look at the MEF Act, lacks the kind of accountability that we have with a framework for oil. So, for instance, the minister responsible for finance is not under any legal obligation to report on the MEF investments to Parliament as is required under the PRMA, where the minister does not only report on the expenditures, but is required by law to indicate the stage of implementation of all projects being funded with oil revenues. So there are issues to take up in terms of advocacy for improvement of the MEF Act to ensure that there is proper accountability in managing the 80% that you are so concerned about. Thank you.
Okay, so for those of us who are not familiar with our speaker, he is Mr. Steve Manteo. Dr. Steve Mante. He's a policy analyst, a communication specialist, and he's with ISODEC, that is Integrated Social Development Center. Co-chair. Wow, the portfolio is big. I think I have to give the microphone to you, so you give us the tall list of your endeavors. Thank you so much. I will duly acknowledge him, give him the opportunity to close us. So I don't know if there are any questions or comments. All right, I see. Okay, so let me give to the Chief Executive of Minerals Commission.
I wanted to respond to the question the gentleman asked. I think the gentleman standing there on the issue of payments on some local something training. He's talking about, is it training or whatever? Yes, and then he was asking why is that they are not capturing anything in mining or so. There's nothing like the mining sector per se, but I'll tell you what the rules are. Now, there's a new local content reg or regulation. It came into force December 2020. Then there's this 1 year transition period. So it ended just last December. Prior to that, what the law requires companies to do is that any company that sets out and enters into production is supposed to submit what we call a localization plan. And trust me, these are things we enforce strictly. If you've been reading the papers, you can see we've even increased the items from 29 to 41. And the adverts are, the notice is still running. So let's say if it is Newmont or Anglo Good Ashanti, whatever, you're supposed to give us your localization plan. And it's in two aspects. One, how much are you going to spend on training? First of all, you have to give us the full list of everybody employed there, middle, junior, whatever. How much you're going to spend. If you happen to have expatriates, which is now particularly, something that is becoming a thing of the past, you have to tell us, I have this number of expatriates, how much they are paid, what they are doing, the Ghanaian counterpart, when he's going to take over, what training you give him. And trust me, we monitor very well. So that's what we've been doing. And then I think 2020, the law came. Now the law says that companies must present a program to Minerals Commission as to how they are going to spend money on training people, supporting the universities, the technical institutes, whatever. So we've just started a program with the Chamber of Mines and Industry to do that. So for example, I'm expecting the South African and then the Canadian and US style type of arrangement. So if, let's say Newmont, I'm not going to force anything on them, but you have to spend the money. Let's say Takwa Goldfields. Goldfields, they have two properties, one in Takwa, one in Aboso or Daman. They can come and tell us that, okay, for us, we want to spend, let's say, $20 million on research and development, skills and technological. This is how we want to do. You cannot have one size fits all. So they can decide and say, all those who are reading mining and mining related programs, let's say at UMAT, every long vac, first year, maybe 40 mining engineers, those who are doing geomatics, we'll take them into the mine. They are already doing it, but this time we want to formalize it properly. You go for that 3 months long vac training. You go back to school. Second year, you do it. Third year, fourth year. By the time they'll be graduating, they are employable. As I speak, 4 ladies went to Newmont, and they've just hired them as permanent employees. Now we want to formalize that rather than the companies doing it. Now, so some have decided to go that route. Others have also decided to say that, 4 of us, we run underground mines. Let's say Obuasi, Chirano, Wasa, and Co. We need this special type of technology. So we want to set up a training center. Like the one the oil and gas people have in Takoradi. We could host it at Obuasi or Wasa. We all contribute, let's say $20 million. And then together with UMAT or any other institution approved by Ministry of Education or whatever institution that satisfy a particular skill, TVET or whatever, because that's what the South Africans do. We'll get approval and we say, look, for the next 20 years, we will need this type of skill. They are not available in Ghana. That's why we bring expertise also. 4 of us are contributing to train them. They certify them. Then we employ them in the mines. Some have decided to go that route. Others who have decided that we will give the money to the university to set up a research and develop a particular area of research that is relevant to what? Industry. So, for example, you take Goldfields and Anglo Ashanti. They've given some big money to one of the finest mining engineering schools in the world, University of Witwatersrand, to develop a particular type of research or technology as to how they can mine underground, because they have the deepest mines in the world. So now, thankfully, the law has made this a formal kind of framework or arrangement, and we are working with industry to do that. So we don't want you to pay us any money. We don't want to say, Anglo Gold, give us $1 million. I don't need that. I need that money to train people at UMAT, the middle-level people to be trained at Poly, or even apprenticeship to do that. So that is a difference between oil and gas and mining. And I'm proud to say that if you take some of the mines, they are fully run by Ghanaians. Take Iduaprim, for instance. Iduaprim, a very big mine near Takwa. 650 full-time employees, from MD to cleaner, Ghanaians. The last expertise was kicked out last year. Most of the MDs now are Ghanaians. Is it Obuasi, is it Asanko and Co. And we are even beginning to go beyond just technical staff being run by Ghanaians. Now, general manager down, Ghanaians. You are even beginning to see Ghanaians now owning mines. Adamus is owned by a Ghanaian. Bauxite has just been bought by a Ghanaian, 80% share. So now Bauxite is run by a Ghanaian. Mensingo, which is doing very well, now 45% Ghanaian. Bibianima is back in life. And they even are buying Chiran. I think you've seen it in the news now. We are trying to get them to list. Now we're also saying, make sure at least 20% of your financial transactions go to the Ghanaian banks. We wanted to do this 2-3 years ago. They started collapsing. So we got a release from Bank of Ghana. Next year we'll increase it to 30. 2024 we'll increase it by 40. So if you're getting about a receipt of $7, $8 to $10 billion, and 20-30% of that money is going to CBG, NIB, Agri Development Bank, I mean, that is localization. The same for insurance. Okay? So, yes, a lot is happening. So that's what I wanted to say. I just wanted to understand you to see how this paying for technology thing works differently from the oil and gas sector. We've been around over 100 years plus, so it's not the same. So take note of that. So if he's not reporting it, that is the reason. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I saw a hand up here. Okay, so kindly let me allow them to come in with their questions so you take your time and answer them for me. Oh, the first round, okay. Okay, that's fine.
Okay, so, Alan, what was the discrepancy? Did you check it yourself? What was the figure? Okay, so it's 590,698. And this is how it came about. Training and technology. Talo said it paid $250,000. Everything in the oil and gas sector is dollars, US dollars. In the mining is cedis. So Talo said it paid, Talo reported $250,000 payment for 2019. There was no corresponding listing from government. We are talking about other GMPC or PC. 2019, maybe PC or GMPC. GMPC. So they didn't report on that. So that means, then the other one was environmental permit and processing fees. Talo reported 465,588. And the EPA reported 124,890. So the difference was 340,698. If you add that to the 250,000, then you are getting 590,698. So that's. So you paid, but they did not, indicate their receipt. So that is it. Yeah.
For fear of, again, misreporting, the impression ought not to be created that GMPC received and did not account. So I think we need to take steps, it's not too late, to unravel that discrepancy if we haven't done that.
That is why we call that unresolved.
Unresolved discrepancy. But you see, if it remains unresolved, then the impression is created that somebody is not accounting for something they ought to account for. So if not even in the current report, the next report should revisit that issue and update it so that we should get a response from GMPC. What happened? Why didn't you confirm that receipt of that money and all that? Perhaps it's an oversight. What? Yes, it could be an addendum, or you could maybe update it in the next report. I mean, you see, we're not the way we do this report, and going forward, I think we'll be taking steps to improve that. We're not building trends. It's touch and go. So you report on something in a particular year, next year you forget entirely about it, even though it's a running issue. And then you touch on new issues. So if we raise this unresolved, and nothing stops us from in touching base with it in the next report, that it was reported in the last report that X amount was unresolved. Okay? Further checks has revealed that this is what happened. So you update. So whoever read the last report and this report will understand that the matter has been resolved. Just like we are based on fiscal expenditures.
So, Steve, in addition to that, I also think some of these issues, because we are dealing with a limited time, that is why the MSG. For this time, that's what. Okay, that's what the MSG also helps, because you have representatives. So in this case, PC is on the MSG, GMPC is on the MSG, and Talo is also there. So they can. So just so that you take note. Yeah. Because it doesn't look too good. It didn't come to you. That's the point I'm making. So please. No, but the report is there. It doesn't have to come to the report is there. during the validation, that is the purpose. Because this figure, these ones have been there since the validation time. Yeah.
So we had a validation.
Yeah, the figures were there.
And what was the response we gave? What was the response we gave? It didn't come out.
We don't have to.
It didn't come out. But
sometimes when the draft report is shared,
no.
Agencies, you look at your site. Yeah.
Bottom line is that the report says something, and we need to work with it. That's all. The important thing is that when you say there's a discrepancy, for the purposes of the public and everything, we just need to be very clear what we are saying. And as Steve said, it's not saying that one has done or one hasn't done or one has received, one hasn't received. Right? So that's the key thing for the messages here. That's the key thing. Whatever it is, it will be resolved. And if in the next report it's not resolved, then we can go on with it. And also, we also have materiality thresholds, and some of these figures, like you said, is 0 point something, a percentage and all that. Again, relevance, but whatever it is, it needs to be resolved. It has to be resolved.
All right, thank you. My name is Millicent from World University Service of Canada. I want to find out from Ghana EITI how this very important information will get to those in the communities, because we have a lot of information over here. I remember when we started our project, we invited Ghana EITI to Christian Winnie Valley and Wasa East. And that was even the first time of the district hearing about Ghana EITI and even getting to know some of this information. So I want to find out if there are processes of, Ghana EITI going to take to make sure that those in the communities also get the information and then understand some of the things that are happening. Because we see that sometimes even the disbursement of the funds that do not get into the district on time. But those in the communities will think that the money has gotten to the district assemblies and they are not accounting to them. So sometimes we need to try and make this information accessible to them. So I don't know if Doc or Alaji will answer this for me.
Okay. Thank you, Millicent. So what we have been doing as Gheiti to deal with this issue, the community-based issue, is number one. Whenever we go for our dissemination, we do organize what we call community fora. And this, in order for the information to sync, and then maybe looking at the level of the community and then the language spoken there. We do that community fora and the local dialect. And to also give them an opportunity to be able to respond to and ask critical questions and also build their capacity. That's one. And then number two, at the MSG level, we have discussed the need for us to summarize this big report into something like infographics, okay, so that even if anybody at all picks it, you will be able to look at just the key issues, using the infographics to explain some of these numbers and the big figures that we have talked about. I think that is, this is something we intend to do. Maybe I want to. Okay. Yeah.
To move the conversation around resource governance from the center to the place where the resource is mined. And so your monitoring team, for instance, is one of the strategies we are considering to create a kind of a multi-stakeholder platform at the local level so that when the report is produced, they can pick up the issues that pertain to them and have their own conversation in terms of how well the assembly is using their share of mineral royalty and what needs to be done to improve the development outcomes of these revenues that go to the subnational level. So we'll be meeting with you to look at how we can collaborate. You can support us in centralizing the EITI conversation.
Thank you very much. I think over the years there have been some discussions around accountability for part of MDF fund that goes to, let me use the term, maintain the stool. I don't know whether if we've just abandoned the conversation or there are issues with regard to ensuring that that part of the money is being accounted for, or yeah, can I get a response on?
That confusion was created by the Constitution. But again, it's a case of misapplication of a constitutional provision. The Constitution actually provides for this arrangement with respect to stool land revenue. The disbursements to traditional authority, as provided for in the Constitution, is in respect of stool land revenue. The same Constitution says that minerals are vested in the state, not in the stool. When we talk about stool land revenue, we are referring to revenues that are derived from the exercise of the surface rights. So timber revenue is stool land revenue. Ground rent is stool land revenue. The question is mineral royalty stool land revenue? The answer is no, because the law says that mineral royalty, or the minerals themselves, are vested in the state. So they are part of the larger public finance. The government then decides to give part to the communities and to the stools. Okay? And because we didn't have a law to support that practice, we issued an administrative letter to support that practice that sends money to the stool and to other stakeholders. Today we have the MDF. But somehow, the MDF assumed that the practice that is based on that administrative letter was a proper one. And so if you look at the MDF Act, it was quiet on the distribution formula for the mineral royalty. Thankfully, this and other gaps in the MDF Act has come to attention. And a committee has been established within the ministry to review the MDF Act. So now we have an opportunity to address these. If the intent is to get the chiefs to apply to development programs within their locality, this is the time we can see to that. Incidentally, I serve on that committee. So you can be sure that I'll bring it up so that we get it resolved once and for all. So we stop referring the MDF practice to, citing it from the Constitution. It must be based solely on the MDF and what it's intended for. Thank you.
If there are no further questions or comments, I don't know if I have to invite Dr. Steve Mantia to give us something small before we take our vote of thanks. All right, so Doctor, we are in your hands now. In the next 2-3 minutes, give us something to take home. Thank you.
Oh, Martin, you didn't want to hear what I have to say. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a long day, so I do not intend to prolong it any further. I'm happy at long last we've managed to launch the report. But launching the report is not to be taken as bringing everything to a closure. The launch of the report itself opens the floodgates for discussions around its content. And as we discuss, we want to get feedback from you in terms of how Gheiti can improve subsequent report and to ensure that they serve our own national developmental interests. In a week or so, we'll begin the process of putting together the next report, the next Gheiti report, and it will cover 20. Anybody who has any information, any dossier, any issue you want us to look into, please feel free and share that information with the Gheiti Secretariat at the Ministry of Finance. We want to ensure that at least the information provided, we don't provide this information for government use, but principally, the EITI is intended to address citizens' quest for information. So it's the kind of information that you need to hold government accountable for the use of the monies that we have to ensure we provide in these reports. If you think that there's a need for further disaggregation of some of the information, especially because you are located at a part of the country and you don't see yourself in that report, please, you can draw our attention and we'll make sure that at least we cover these. The next report is going to focus extensively on the subnational, as well as the artisanal and small-scale mining sector. This is because even though most of the revenue, the bulk of the mineral revenues accrue to national government, it is the local people who have to live for decades time with the unintended negative consequences of mining. And so we have a responsibility to ensure that the mining activity does not leave them poorer than they were found. So we need to ensure that at least we improve the conditions of life of the people who live close to the mine. And that is why we want to shift the conversation from the national level to the subnational level in terms of how we address the local resource scarce which many mining communities are confronted with. We'll be working with partners on the ground. The World University Service of Canada has done some work, and we don't want to, leave that legacy unattended. So we'll be working very closely with you in terms of how we can build on that. And I know Friends of the Nation also has been doing some work within the communities. We'll be working with you. We'll be reaching out to you in terms of our subnational work. I think welcome to. I'm happy you are all here. So we're going to be more ambitious as a country in terms of what kinds of developmental projects we can use the EITI to bring about and to ensure that on the day when the story is told, Ghana can be bold to say that we have been able to use the EITI to improve the development outcomes of the mining and also oil and gas sectors of this country. On that note, I will hand over for the vote of thanks and then any final protocols.
Thank you so much, Dr. Manteo. We've had a long day, and I don't intend to, bore us with more vote of thanks and other issues. So I will straight up go to a broadcast journalist. He's a personal friend of mine. She works with TV3 to give us the closing prayer. Her name is Mrs. Grace Ajiman. Let's welcome her as she gives us the closing prayers. Oh, are we not happy to have her close us? Draw the curtain down for us.
Please, let's prepare our hearts and our minds for prayer. I'm grateful unto you, Spirit Divine, for a beautiful event. We pray you help us manage our resources, O God, unto your glory. And we also ask that you help us take good actions, especially on all the recommendations that have been mentioned here. Give us safe journeys to our various destinations so that glory and honor is given unto your name. We thank you in the mighty name of your Son, Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.
Thank you,